It started like any other calm day in the Imperial Command Center. The stars beyond the great viewing windows looked peaceful, unchanging as if the galaxy itself slept. Technicians went through their usual routines, checking sensor sweeps and verifying patrol routes. Nothing ever happened in this sector. Nothing ever changed. But then the quiet rhythm broke. A faint alarm flickered to life on one of the deep space monitors. A young officer leaned closer, frowning. Probably a sensor glitch, someone said. They had seen thousands of false readings before. Bits of debris, old wrecks, or rogue signals from forgotten satellites. But this one felt different. The numbers on the screen were moving too fast, climbing higher every second. The officer hesitated before calling it in. "Commander, I think you should take a look at this." Within moments, a cluster of senior staff gathered around the terminal. A single object was showing up beyond the outer boundary of known Imperial space. Its energy output was enormous, far beyond anything a civilian ship could produce. The commander's expression tightened. "Run a registry check," he ordered. The automated database began cycling through known ship designs, signatures, and power types. The result came back blank. No match, no registration. No manufacturer. The room went still. Even the hum of the lights seemed quieter. The commander tried again, running a cross-check through restricted military archives. Still nothing. "That's impossible," he muttered. Every ship built within the Empire, legal or illegal, had a traceable signature. Even pirates left a digital fingerprint. But this vessel was a ghost. As the data streamed in, the technicians noticed something else. The object wasn't just drifting through space. It was moving with purpose. Slow at first, almost cautious, then gradually accelerating, straight toward the Imperial capital system. "Trajectory confirmed," another officer whispered. "It's headed right for us." Within minutes, the calm command center turned into organized chaos. Alarms blared across the facility. Multiple departments came online: defense coordination, intelligence, communications, and fleet readiness. The Empire's most secure system had just become the target of an unidentified craft, and no one could explain why. Across the galaxy, similar alerts began lighting up at relay stations. Fleet captains received encrypted messages stamped with the highest urgency codes. Dozens of ships started preparing to intercept. Still, no one knew what they were up against. In the High Council chamber, word of the incident spread quickly. Some dismissed it as a smuggler's trick or a pirate fleet testing new cloaking technology. Others weren't so sure. The readings were too advanced, too clean. "What kind of power source is that?" one official asked, staring at the live feed. The ship's energy field was like nothing in the Empire's databases. It pulsed in smooth, rhythmic intervals as if alive. Technicians tried to scan deeper, to identify weapons, engines, or hull design, but every probe failed. The ship emitted a strange interference blocking their systems. It was as if the vessel didn't want to be seen, at least not fully. By the third hour, panic began spreading through the lower ranks. Rumors leaked that the object had already passed several outposts without slowing down. The garrison stationed there reported no response to hails, no sign of aggression, but every time they tried to scan it, their systems crashed. The last message from one of the relay ships simply read, "It's not like anything we've seen." Then the signal cut off. In the control room, the commander tried to steady his crew. "We don't panic over a single ship," he said. But even he could feel the unease spreading. The Empire controlled thousands of star systems. No single vessel should have been capable of causing this much confusion. And yet here they were, watching as an unregistered object made its way straight into the heart of Imperial power. Military analysts were called in. They examined the data and compared it to every known species and technology. Some patterns matched ancient records, pieces of history long buried and half forgotten. One researcher hesitated before speaking up. "The hull composition," she said softly. "It resembles something." Terran. The room fell silent. No one spoke that word casually. Terrans, the old human species, were supposed to be extinct. Hundreds of years ago, during the Terran conflict, they had waged war across the stars and nearly destroyed themselves in the process. Their homeworld had vanished from star maps, their colonies burned, and their people erased from history. "Impossible," said one officer sharply. "Humanity is gone. There's nothing left of them." But as the data continued to scroll, the similarities became undeniable. The metal structure, the design symmetry, the power modulation, It all carried a faint signature of Terran engineering. Old but unmistakable. At first, the council laughed it off as coincidence. Yet as more evidence arrived, laughter turned to unease. Could the Terrans have survived out there, somewhere beyond the edges of mapped space? And if they had, what had they become after all this time? As the unidentified vessel drew closer, long-range cameras finally captured its outline. The image was grainy but clear enough to make out its shape. A massive ship larger than any Imperial dreadnought, with sleek lines and dark armor that seemed to swallow light itself. No insignias, no markings, no communication beacons. Just a single glowing line along its hull, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. "Do we attempt contact?" one of the officers asked. The commander nodded. "Yes, try every frequency, every code. Let them know this is Imperial territory." The transmission was sent out. Polite, formal, and direct. Minutes passed. No response. They tried again. Still nothing. The silence felt heavy. The ship continued on course, unchanging, unstoppable. Then, without warning, the vessel made a subtle adjustment. Its engines brightened and its speed increased. It was no longer just heading toward the Imperial system. It was approaching one of the main defense perimeters. The commander turned to his crew. "Get me the fleet," he said. Across the system, warships began to move. Battleships powered up their main cannons. Fighter wings prepared for launch. Every defensive protocol went active. The Empire had faced rebellions, pirates, even alien armadas before, but never something like this. When the first line of destroyers locked sensors on the unknown ship, the readings nearly blinded their systems. "Power levels off the chart," one pilot reported. "I've never seen anything like it." The admiral in charge of the defense fleet tried to open communications again. "Unidentified vessel, you are entering restricted Imperial space. Identify yourself immediately or we will be forced to." Before he could finish, static filled the channel. The comms cut out. The unidentified ship remained silent. It didn't raise weapons. It didn't respond. It just kept moving forward, calm and deliberate, like it knew exactly what it was doing. Back in the command center, the young officer who first spotted the signal whispered to no one in particular, "What if they're not ignoring us? What if they just don't care?" The commander glanced at him but said nothing. Hours later, as the mysterious craft drew within striking range of the outer defense grid, the council sent new orders. "Do not engage unless fired upon." But no one knew what fired upon meant anymore. Every sensor reading from the ship showed unimaginable power, enough to erase an entire fleet in seconds if the numbers were true. Throughout the Empire, people watched as the event unfolded. Civilian broadcasts began speculating about the object. Some called it a weapon, others said it was a message. A few even whispered the forbidden word again, Terran. By the end of the day, the galaxy's largest military force stood ready, weapons aimed at a single approaching ship whose origin no one could confirm. The Empire's leaders tried to project calm, but their faces betrayed the truth, because deep down, everyone felt the same chill. Something ancient was coming, something that shouldn't exist. And as the unidentified vessel glided silently through the darkness, heading straight toward the Imperial homeworld, one line kept repeating across every open communication channel, a report that echoed in every control room, in every officer's headset, in every trembling voice across the Empire. "That's no registered vessel, and it's headed straight for us." The next day, the Imperial Council held an emergency meeting that stretched into the early hours of the morning. The air inside the chamber felt heavy, filled with unease. Every display screen showed the same image, that single dark ship drifting slowly toward the Imperial system. No one spoke for a moment. The sound of quiet breathing and nervous tapping filled the room. Finally, one of the senior officials broke the silence. "Has anyone identified it yet?" The response came quickly. "No registration, no communication, and no known design. Every database we have says it doesn't exist." The council members exchanged uncertain looks. The Empire prided itself on total control over space information and history. The idea that something could appear inside their borders without permission was unthinkable. And yet the evidence was right there in front of them. More data came in through the night. Scans from multiple satellites showed the same thing. The ship's energy readings were beyond known limits. The material it was made of was unrecognizable, and yet strangely familiar. It was the kind of familiarity that made older officers uneasy, though none of them wanted to admit why. Down in the Archives Division, deep beneath the Imperial City, researchers worked quietly through ancient data files. Some of the records were so old they had to be converted from near-lost formats. Dust covered the consoles. Most of these systems hadn't been touched in centuries. One of the archivists found something that caught her eye, an ancient war report from the Terran conflict era. The words were faded, the digital signature half corrupted, but she could still make out parts of it. She leaned closer, heart pounding. The report described a battle long forgotten, one involving a human fleet that used unknown alloys and power systems far ahead of their time. When she cross-checked the details with the new readings from the mysterious vessel, her hands froze. The similarities were undeniable. The engine signatures, the energy waves, even the structural layering of the metal, it all matched the long-lost Terran designs. She hesitated before contacting her supervisor. Nobody in the Empire liked talking about humans. The official story said they were extinct, a species that couldn't adapt to the galactic age. But now, staring at the data, she began to wonder if the Empire had been wrong all along. Word of her discovery spread quickly. By morning, the Council's inner circle gathered to discuss what it could mean. The Emperor's advisor spoke first. "If this is a Terran vessel," he said quietly, "then history itself is about to change." Another council member shook his head. "That's impossible. The Terrans destroyed themselves. Their systems were turned to glass. We made sure of it, but what if they didn't?" came the reply. "What if they left before it happened?" No one wanted to imagine that possibility. For centuries, the Empire had treated the Terran War as the final proof of their superiority. It was the moment they rose to power. If humans had survived, if they had built something stronger, it would shake the foundation of everything they believed in. Out in the starships positioned along the border, the military kept their focus on the approaching craft. Pilots sat ready in their cockpits, waiting for orders that never came. The unknown ship continued to glide forward, not aggressive, not afraid. It was almost peaceful, and that was what made it worse. Every time a probe tried to approach, the readings would fail. Some of the smaller drones simply shut down mid-flight, their systems fried by invisible interference. Engineers described it as a technological mismatch, as if the unknown ship operated on a level so advanced that Imperial systems couldn't even interact with it properly. In one observation post, a young officer watched the data feed and whispered, "If it's really them, if humans are back, what do we do?" No one answered, because no one knew. The Empire had always seen itself as the heart of the galaxy, powerful, organized, and unbeatable. But the Terrans were different. They had been unpredictable, emotional, and frighteningly creative. They didn't build things by committee or protocol. They built things out of necessity, out of survival, and that made them dangerous. For centuries, the official history had painted them as reckless and self-destructive. But old soldiers still remembered the truth, that the Terrans had fought the entire galaxy at once and nearly won. Only after countless losses and alliances had they been pushed back, system by system, until they finally disappeared, and now, one ship had returned. In the Imperial Fleet headquarters, debates turned into shouting matches. Some generals wanted to prepare for war immediately. Others said to wait and observe. If they wanted to attack, one admiral argued, they would have done it already. But others weren't so sure. "Maybe they're testing us," another countered. "Maybe this is their way of measuring how weak we've become." Late that night, a private meeting took place between the Emperor's highest advisors. The discussion was off the record, unrecorded, unspoken outside that room. "What if they've been out there all this time?" one asked quietly, building in silence. "Watching us grow arrogant, waiting." The Emperor didn't respond. He simply stared at the image of the ship projected before him. A dark shape surrounded by faint blue light, like a ghost gliding through the void. Somewhere deep in his mind, he remembered an old phrase from the early days of the Empire, one that had survived only as a whisper: "Do not wake the Terrans." Meanwhile, scientists continued to dig deeper into the signal patterns around the ship. One of them noticed a faint repeating code embedded in the background noise. It wasn't random static. It was organized, almost like a heartbeat, slow, deliberate, and perfectly timed. They ran the pattern through translation software, and the first decoded fragment left everyone stunned. The signal wasn't alien. It wasn't random. It was built using Terran logic. They had tried to hide it, but the truth was now undeniable. Humanity hadn't died. Humanity had evolved. As the mysterious vessel drew closer, the Empire's highest officials began to prepare evacuation plans in secret. None of them wanted to admit it publicly, but deep down they feared what would happen when that ship finally arrived. Every report that came in only deepened the mystery. The ship had no escort, no support fleet, no visible weapons, and yet every analysis said it had power equal to an entire Imperial battle group. Across the outer colonies, whispers spread like wildfire. Civilians began to panic. Some believed the ship was a lost god returning to punish the Empire. Others believed it was a new beginning, the return of the species that once defied the stars. The Empire tried to control the narrative, blocking transmissions and censoring the news feeds. But it was too late. The image of the dark vessel had already gone viral. People started asking questions, and questions the government didn't want to answer. Why was the Empire afraid of one ship? Who were the Terrans really? And if they had survived this long, what did they want now? Back in the control room, the commander who had first seen the signal stood silently at his station, watching the ship grow larger on the main screen. He could see faint lights along its hull now, forming strange geometric shapes. He didn't know if they were markings or messages. One of the technicians spoke softly beside him. "Do you think they know who we are?" He thought for a long moment before answering. "I think they know everything." Outside, the stars shimmered against the blackness of space. The unidentified vessel kept moving, silent, unstoppable, majestic in a way that felt both terrifying and beautiful. The Empire had always believed it ruled the galaxy through strength and knowledge. But as they watched that single ship draw closer, every proud belief began to crumble. Because deep down, everyone, from the lowest technician to the highest council member, began to feel the same quiet truth rising inside them. The galaxy was about to change forever. And somewhere out there, in the cold void, humanity was coming home. For days, the strange vessel moved in silence through Imperial space. Every hour brought it closer to the heart of the Empire, and every attempt to communicate with it ended the same way, nothing but static. The longer it remained silent, the more restless people became. In the outer colonies, traders stopped their routes and stayed docked at stations. Civilian ships refused to travel near the central systems. Everyone had seen the images, the dark ship drifting through space surrounded by faint blue light. It was like watching a storm forming in slow motion. Nobody knew what would happen, but everyone could feel it coming. In the Imperial Command Center, hundreds of officers worked around the clock. Every screen showed the same feed, the mysterious vessel steady and calm. It wasn't hiding anymore. It wanted to be seen. The Empire sent more messages using every known frequency, every code, even ancient ones that hadn't been used for centuries. Still no answer. Then one quiet night, everything changed. It began with a pulse. A faint wave rippled through space, too subtle to trigger alarms but strong enough to be noticed. It wasn't an attack, it was communication. The signal cut through the Empire's channels like a blade through glass. All screens flickered, the lights dimmed, and for a few seconds nothing worked. Then a voice spoke. It wasn't loud or angry. It was calm, almost human. Deep, steady, and filled with something that no machine could fake. Confidence. At first, no one understood the language. The system labeled it as unknown pre-standard dialect. But a few seconds later, the translation programs began to catch up. The voice was speaking in an ancient human tongue, Terran English. The translation finished and the message appeared on every screen in the command center. To the Empire occupying Terran space, stand down. You are in violation of human territory. The words hit like thunder. Officers stared at the screens, frozen. For a moment, the room went completely silent. Nobody dared to move. Then chaos erupted. "Is this real?" someone shouted. "Who sent that?" Another officer began frantically checking the communication systems. But the source couldn't be traced. The signal came from the unidentified ship, yes, but it wasn't just transmitted through normal channels. It had overridden everything, using frequencies the Empire didn't even know existed. The message repeated, this time slower, as if to make sure everyone understood. To the Empire occupying Terran space, stand down. You are in violation of human territory. The commander clenched his fists, trying to keep his voice steady. They're claiming this system belongs to them? One of the analysts turned toward him. Sir, according to ancient records, before the Empire expanded, this system was Terran space. Thousands of years ago. The commander didn't reply. He didn't need to. Everyone in the room already understood what that meant. The ship wasn't just passing through. It was reclaiming something. The Empire had always seen itself as eternal, its power unquestioned. But now, standing in front of this message, every officer in that room felt the same chill crawl up their spine. Outside, the fleet stationed near the system's edge began to form defensive lines. Hundreds of ships, from small corvettes to massive dreadnoughts, positioned themselves in perfect formation. The Empire's finest stood ready to face a single unknown vessel. The admiral in charge of the defense grid ordered one last attempt at peaceful contact. "This is the Imperial fleet," he said, his voice echoing through the transmission. "You are approaching restricted space. Identify yourself immediately or we will." Before he could finish, the signal cut out. The screens flickered again and the same calm voice replied, interrupting every transmission in the sector. "Warning acknowledged. We are aware of your defenses. Do not engage. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement. Simple, cold, final." The admiral's jaw tightened. "Do not engage?" he repeated under his breath. "They're telling us what to do?" He ordered the fleet to hold formation, but prepare to fire if the vessel made any aggressive move. But deep inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that firing wouldn't change anything. As the dark ship came into view, even the most battle-hardened captains felt a strange sense of awe. The vessel was enormous, larger than any Imperial ship ever built. Its hull shimmered faintly with some kind of energy field, and the surface seemed alive, shifting like liquid metal under the starlight. No weapons were visible, but the sensors told a different story. The ship's energy output was off the scale, like standing next to a star. The admiral whispered, "What kind of power are they using?" Nobody had an answer. One of the officers reported that several nearby ships had already lost control of their systems. Their navigation and communication were jammed, not by an attack, but by the sheer presence of the unknown craft's field. The admiral gave the order to fire a warning shot. Just a single beam, enough to show strength without provoking war. The shot lit up space like a flash of lightning, streaking straight toward the dark vessel. Everyone watched in silence as the beam hit. For a split second, the light flared brightly and then vanished. The energy disappeared into nothing. The ship didn't move. It didn't even flicker. It was as if the beam had never existed. The admiral's heart sank. "Did we miss?" "No, sir," a voice replied quietly. "The shot hit. It just didn't do anything." Then for the first time, the unidentified vessel reacted. A faint glow spread across its surface like veins of light running beneath the armor. The energy built slowly, humming through the comm systems. Every Imperial ship's sensors went into overload. The noise was deafening. "Shut it down! Pull back!" the admiral shouted. But it was already too late. A wave of invisible energy spread from the dark vessel. It didn't destroy anything, but every Imperial ship system shut down instantly. Weapons, engines, shields, everything. Thousands of warships floated powerless in space. The stars themselves went quiet. Then the voice returned, echoing through every ship. "We do not seek conflict, but this territory is not yours." The tone was calm, but it carried a weight that made even the most fearless soldiers feel small. As suddenly as it began, the interference ended. The Imperial system slowly rebooted one by one. The dark ship remained still as if waiting. The admiral looked at the readings and realized something chilling. The vessel could have destroyed them all with ease, but it hadn't. It had chosen restraint. The Empire had just been shown mercy. Back in the capital, the council watched the event unfold on their secure feeds. Some called for full retaliation, others begged for negotiation. But one thing was certain. The Empire's pride had been shattered. For generations, they had believed themselves the rulers of the stars. Now they stood face to face with something far greater, something that had once been human and had now become something far beyond. Across the galaxy, news spread faster than the Empire could suppress it. The message from the Terran ship had been intercepted by dozens of relay networks. Within hours, it reached every corner of known space. To the Empire occupying Terran space, stand down. People everywhere listened in disbelief. Some laughed it off as propaganda. Others watched the footage and realized it was no joke. That voice, calm and steady, had spoken with the kind of authority only power could give. The Empire tried to control the story, claiming it was a hoax, an elaborate trick by rebels. But the truth was too obvious. The ship was real. The power was real. And whoever they were not afraid. In the days that followed, something shifted in the galaxy. The word Terran returned to people's lips for the first time in centuries. Not as a memory, but as a warning. And deep within the Imperial Palace, behind closed doors, the Emperor listened to the recording again and again. Each time his expression grew darker. He finally spoke to his advisors in a low voice. "If they've returned," he said, "then we are no longer the ones in control." Outside, the Terran ship continued its silent approach. No aggression, no demands, just presence, heavy, undeniable, unstoppable. The Empire could feel it now. This wasn't an enemy-seeking war. This was something older, something that had come to remind the galaxy who truly built the stars. And as the vessel's shadow passed over the Imperial sensor grid, one final report came through the fleet channel. The voice on the transmission trembled as it spoke. The entire galaxy held its breath. The mysterious ship, massive and silent, floated near the Imperial capital system like a shadow from a forgotten age. Every defense fleet stood ready, but no one dared to move first. The Empire had seen its power once. Just one pulse from that ship had shut down thousands of vessels. No one wanted to see what would happen if it attacked for real. For the first time in history, the Empire was afraid. Inside the command center, tension was thick. The main viewing screen showed the ship in orbit around the system's outer gas giant. It wasn't hiding anymore. It was just there, calm, confident, unbothered. It didn't send another message. It didn't need to. The silence was louder than any threat. Fleet Command tried to calculate its size. Every new scan came back with different numbers, as if the ship itself was distorting the readings. The best estimate said it was longer than any Imperial battleship ever built, a floating fortress the size of a small moon. The commander stared at the live feed and whispered, "How did humans build something like that?" No one answered. No one could. The Empire's pride had been built on the belief that humans were extinct, that their reckless nature had destroyed them. But now, staring at that ship, it became clear that the stories were wrong. Humanity hadn't died. They had simply left, and whatever they had become out there, it was beyond anything the galaxy had seen before. The Emperor called a secret council meeting. The top military minds, scientists, and historians were all summoned. They gathered in the Grand Chamber, a room that once echoed with speeches of victory and conquest. Tonight it was filled with fear. "The Terran vessel remains in position," reported one of the admirals. "No hostile actions have been detected since the initial broadcast." "Then why are they here?" the Emperor asked quietly. His voice carried across the room, low and sharp. "Why return now after all this time?" The chief historian cleared his throat nervously. "If they truly are Terrans, Your Majesty, then perhaps they've come to reclaim what was once theirs. According to the ancient records, this region of space was part of humanity's original domain. That word, reclaim, made everyone uneasy. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for centuries, but they had always known their power was built on the ruins of the old human worlds. If humanity had survived and grown stronger, then the balance of the galaxy was about to change forever. "Could it be a single ship?" asked one council member. "A scout, perhaps? A relic from their past?" A scientist shook his head. "No, that ship's energy core is far too advanced to be old technology. If this is what they send ahead, imagine what's waiting behind it." The Emperor said nothing. He simply stared at the hologram of the dark ship projected before him. Its hull shimmered like liquid metal, and faint lines of light pulsed beneath its surface, like veins in a living creature. It didn't look like a weapon. It looked like something far more sophisticated, something alive. Across the system, every Imperial fleet was now on full alert. The admirals positioned their ships in a defensive circle, their weapons charged but locked. They didn't want to start a war, but they couldn't risk letting that vessel near the homeworld. In one of the command ships, the admiral watched the silent screen with unease. "We've fought hundreds of wars," he said softly. "But I've never felt like this before. It's not fear of battle, it's fear of the unknown." Another officer turned to him. "What if they don't want war? What if they're just here to warn us?" The admiral shook his head. "A warning that powerful is still a threat." Hours passed, and still the Terran ship made no move. The Empire grew restless. Reports from outer colonies poured in. Panic, riots, people demanding answers. Rumors spread that the Terrans had already destroyed fleets in other sectors, though none of it was confirmed. The unknown had turned into fear and fear into chaos. The Empire decided to act. A fleet of 20 ships was ordered to move closer, not to attack, but to observe. Each one carried advanced scanners and defensive shielding. They approached cautiously, keeping a safe distance, broadcasting peaceful messages. "Unidentified vessel, this is the Imperial Observation Fleet," came the transmission. "We request open communication to clarify your intentions." No response. They tried again, switching to ancient Terran languages. Still nothing. Then the ship began to move. Slowly, almost gracefully, it turned. Not to flee, not to attack, but to face them directly. "Adjust course. Maintain distance," the fleet commander ordered. The Terran ship stopped. For a brief moment, everything was calm. Then a deep, resonant sound filled the air. Not through speakers, but through the very hulls of the ships themselves. It was a frequency, a vibration that shook every system, every mind. The fleet's scanners went wild. Lights flickered, shields fluctuated, and systems rebooted on their own. Then a single image appeared across all screens, and a symbol. A circle divided by 3 lines, surrounded by stars. No one recognized it, but it carried weight, as if it represented something ancient. The translation team worked frantically. When the pattern was decoded, it revealed 3 words written in Old Terran script. United Terran Command. The crew stared in disbelief. Humanity wasn't just alive, it was organized, unified, powerful. The transmission ended as suddenly as it began. The Terran ship resumed its silence, but the message was clear. They were no longer wanderers or survivors. They were a civilization reborn. Back in the Imperial Palace, the Emperor's advisors argued among themselves. Some demanded immediate surrender of Terran territories. Others insisted they mobilize the full Imperial fleet and prepare for war. The Emperor listened quietly, then stood. His voice, when he spoke, carried through the room. "They sent one ship, and it shut down half our defenses without firing a shot. If that is not a show of dominance, I don't know what is." The room went silent. Outside the palace, millions of citizens looked up at the night sky, where the Terran vessel glowed faintly above the atmosphere. It was visible even to the naked eye, a dark, steady light that never wavered. To some, it was a sign of hope. To others, it was the beginning of their end. The Empire's intelligence division began intercepting private messages from across the galaxy. Traitors, mercenaries, and colony governors were whispering the same thing. The Terrans were back. Some even claimed to have seen other ships in deep space, enormous silhouettes hidden behind nebula clouds. No one could prove it, but the stories spread faster than light. Even the Empire's allies grew nervous. If the Terrans were powerful enough to cripple the Empire's fleets, what chance did anyone else have? Old enemies started pulling back their forces, closing their borders, preparing for whatever was coming next. Meanwhile, on the Imperial flagship, the Admiral watched the readings from the observation fleet. "It's not doing anything now," he said, "but it's watching us. Every time we adjust position, it reacts. It knows exactly what we're doing." He leaned closer to the screen and whispered, "It's studying us." Then, without warning, a new signal came through, faint but unmistakable. It wasn't an open message this time. It was directed only at the Empire's central command. "Your expansion ends here." Just 6 words, but they hit harder than any weapon. The meaning was undeniable. Humanity wasn't asking. They were declaring. The commander of the fleet swallowed hard. "What do we do?" "Nothing," the Admiral said quietly. "For now, we do nothing. Because whatever that thing is, it's not here to negotiate. It's here to remind us that we're not alone." Across the galaxy, the once proud Empire began to tremble under the weight of a truth they could no longer deny. The age of imperial dominance was ending, and the age of humanity was returning. The Terran ship stayed where it was, silent and unmoving, its presence alone enough to reshape the galaxy's balance. Every power, every species, every empire began watching, waiting, and whispering the same fearful question. If this was just one ship, how many more were out there? And what would happen when the rest arrived? For days, the Empire tried to maintain control, but it was clear that control was slipping. The Terran vessel remained in orbit, silent yet undeniable. Its presence alone caused unrest, confusion, and fear. Every fleet, every colony, and every council member knew the Empire's power had limits. Limits that this single ship had already proven existed. Inside the Imperial Command Center, the council met again. This time the mood was darker than ever. Officers and advisors whispered among themselves, unsure of what to do next. Nobody had answers. Every plan they had relied on assumed that no force could challenge them so easily. Yet here was proof that assumption was wrong. The Emperor's advisor spoke first, his voice low and measured. We can no longer see this as a single ship or a lone anomaly. The evidence suggests an organized force behind it. A younger officer scoffed nervously. You mean the Terrans? That's impossible. They've been extinct for centuries. The advisor shook his head. Impossible only describes what we've known. But data from the ship and our sensors tell a different story. The Terrans survived. They evolved. And whatever we are seeing now is far beyond anything we can comprehend. The words sank in slowly. Centuries of imperial dominance built on arrogance and certainty began to crumble in the minds of those present. They had treated humans as a long-dead species, a cautionary tale, a relic of history. But history was wrong. The humans were alive, watching, and ready. Meanwhile, the observation fleets near the Terran ship continued to monitor it. Every movement it made, every pulse of energy, revealed more than just power. It was intelligent, precise, deliberate. Each adjustment seemed designed to study the Empire, not attack it yet, but learn exactly how it functioned, how it thought, how it responded. The first undeniable proof came when the ship released small reconnaissance probes. They were unlike anything the Empire had built, small and sleek, almost invisible, yet capable of scanning entire fleets in moments. Within hours, data from the probes began streaming back. Ships' shields, weapons, and engine cores all mapped in astonishing detail. The Imperial scientists were stunned. They're gathering intelligence on us, one whispered. Everything we do, they see it instantly. They understand our technology better than we do ourselves. The realization hit like a thunderclap. The humans hadn't just survived. They had watched, learned, and adapted. They had studied the Empire while remaining hidden, evolving beyond the reach of even the most advanced Imperial detection systems. As the Council debated, an encrypted signal reached the Emperor's private terminal. It wasn't loud or threatening, just a calm, steady transmission. The translation came instantly. Your fleets are impressive but outdated. Your systems are predictable. Humanity has returned to claim its place among the stars. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. For a moment he simply stared at the words. Then he turned to the Council, his voice quiet but commanding. They are not a single ship. They are an organized force, far superior to anything we have faced. They have studied us, planned, and prepared. We are not dealing with explorers or wanderers. We are facing a civilization that has evolved beyond our comprehension. Outside the capital, sensors detected activity far beyond the observation fleets. Massive energy readings flared in the outer sectors, signaling that other Terran ships might already be in position. The Empire had assumed it faced one anomaly. Now it faced the terrifying possibility of an entire fleet. Not just a ship, but a fully operational armada, perfected in secrecy. Panic began to spread among the Empire's allies. Neighboring systems, long under Imperial protection, suddenly questioned their allegiance. If humanity was returning with the power of a full fleet, no empire, no alliance could resist them. Diplomats and governors began quietly withdrawing their forces, preparing for the unknown. Inside the command center, one of the generals tried to rally the officers. We can still fight. We have numbers, experience, and strategy. We can contain them. A young officer shook his head slowly. Contain them? You've seen what a single ship can do. It shut down half our fleets without firing a shot. Our experience means nothing if they've learned how to predict every move we make. The general said nothing. He knew the truth. Every plan, every tactic, every standard battle procedure had just been rendered obsolete. Then came the final confirmation. A probe captured a detailed image of the Terran vessel's interior. It was breathtaking. Humans piloted the ship, not soldiers but scientists, engineers, and officers, all working in perfect harmony. Advanced control systems allowed instantaneous adjustments to weapons, shields, and engines. Every piece of technology was integrated, adaptive, almost alive. It was humanity, but not the humanity the Empire had known from history. These humans were smarter, stronger, and faster. Their technology was decades, maybe centuries ahead. They had rebuilt themselves from scratch, learning from every mistake of the past, and now they were ready. The Emperor finally spoke, his voice heavy with both fear and awe. They are no longer our subjects. They are no longer our rivals. They are something greater, and they are back. Across the galaxy, intelligence reports confirmed the same pattern. Every planet humans had once inhabited now had traces of advanced technology, long hidden from the Empire. Remote colonies thought abandoned were operational again. Entire systems had been silently rebuilt. The humans had returned not as survivors but as masters of a hidden empire, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Back on the flagship, the Admiral turned to his officers. "Do you understand what this means?" "Yes, sir," one replied quietly. "We've been outmatched before, but this is beyond anything. They've studied us. They've planned. They know exactly how to defeat us if they want." The Admiral nodded. "And they haven't attacked yet. That tells us one thing: this isn't just war. It's a message. They are showing us what they can do without firing a single shot. Imagine what happens if they decide to fight." Silence filled the room as everyone absorbed the reality. The Empire had believed itself untouchable. They had assumed that humans were gone, destroyed by time and conflict. But the proof was undeniable. Humanity had survived. Humanity had grown. Humanity had returned to the stars. The Emperor's advisor leaned close, voice trembling slightly. "Your Majesty, this changes everything. Every treaty, every alliance, every plan we've had, all of it is irrelevant now." The Emperor didn't reply immediately. He stared at the holographic display of the Terran vessel. Its sheer presence was humbling. Then he spoke, low and deliberate. "Then we must decide. Do we face them as equals, or do we surrender before the inevitable?" Nobody in the room answered. Nobody could. Meanwhile, outside the capital, sensors detected subtle shifts. Smaller ships moved in formation around the Terran vessel, like shadows following a leader. Energy spikes suggested they were testing systems, scanning fleets and observing responses. The message was clear. This was not a single anomaly. This was the beginning of a full return. Across the Empire, whispers spread. Traders, historians, soldiers, and civilians all repeated the same word in hushed tones. Terrans. Once feared, now unimaginable. Once extinct, now unstoppable. The Council tried to maintain calm. Public broadcasts assured citizens that the Empire was prepared. But deep down, every member knew it was a lie. The Empire had been shown a power far beyond its own, and the implications were terrifying. The first clear understanding struck everyone simultaneously. The Terrans hadn't come for war. Not yet. They had come to remind the galaxy that they existed, that they were powerful, and that the Empire was no longer the undisputed ruler of the stars. And the revelation was simple, but crushing. Humanity was back. Not as refugees. Not as weakened survivors. Not as a scattered species clinging to forgotten planets. They were back as masters of their destiny, and the galaxy would never be the same. For the Empire, the warning was undeniable. For centuries, they had built their dominance on the assumption that humans were gone. That assumption was false. The humans had survived. They had grown. They had returned. And now every leader, every soldier, and every citizen had to face a chilling truth. The humans were not asking for permission. They were here to reclaim their place, and the Empire had no choice but to reckon with it. For the first time in history, the Empire realized that it might not survive what was coming. Because if this ship represented only a fraction of their power, then the real Terran fleet had yet to arrive. The days passed slowly, yet every hour felt like a lifetime. The Terran vessel remained near the Imperial capital system, silent but omnipresent. Its mere presence forced the Empire into a state of constant tension. No one dared make a move, and yet, the thought of doing nothing terrified everyone. Inside the Imperial Command Center, the atmosphere was heavy with unease. Officers and council members moved like shadows, quietly exchanging information, checking systems, and monitoring sensor feeds. Every now and then, a voice would break, the silence with a report, but each one was a reminder of the Empire's new vulnerability. "Sir, the observation fleet reports another energy spike from the Terran vessel," an officer said. "It's not an attack, but it's testing our defenses again." The admiral overseeing the fleet frowned. "We are nothing more than lab rats in their observation," he muttered. "Every move we make, every adjustment in formation, every calculation, they see it. They understand it instantly." He turned to a junior officer. "Do you understand what that means?" The officer swallowed hard. "It means they are far beyond us, sir. Far beyond anything we've ever faced." Across the system, Imperial colonies had begun to notice unusual activity. Sensor readings from outer planets and asteroid belts suggested other ships, smaller, more advanced Terran vessels, were emerging from hidden sectors. They moved with precision, scanning, observing, mapping. The Empire's leaders realized with growing horror that the ship in orbit was not alone. It was the Vanguard, a silent herald of a returning force far larger than anyone could imagine. In the council chamber, debate raged. Some urged diplomacy, to attempt peaceful communication and negotiate terms. Others called for a preemptive strike, claiming that waiting would only allow the Terrans to gain an even greater advantage. The Emperor sat in silence, watching the debates unfold. Finally he spoke. "You speak as if we have options. We do not. A single Terran vessel has already demonstrated the power to neutralize our fleets without a single shot fired. If we act rashly, the consequences will be catastrophic. Our only choice is to understand, observe, and prepare. Everything else is risk." Even his most loyal advisors nodded reluctantly. Deep down, everyone understood that the Empire had underestimated the humans. For centuries, they had written humanity off as extinct, irrelevant, and weak. Now that assumption had been shattered. Outside the capital, the Terran ship remained as still as ever. Yet the small probes it had released moved through space like a swarm of shadows, scanning every Imperial ship, monitoring every signal, measuring every response. The presence of these probes confirmed the Council's worst fear. The humans were patient, methodical, and infinitely precise. They were not here to fight recklessly. They were here to study, learn, and dominate. In the observation fleet, officers whispered among themselves. "Do you think they plan to attack?" one asked. Another shook their head. "I don't think they need to. They can dismantle us without ever firing a shot. Look at what they've done already. Every system, every ship, every defense, they know it better than we do. If they wanted to, we would be gone." The realization sent a shiver down everyone's spine. The Empire's pride, built over centuries of conquest and expansion, suddenly felt fragile, brittle, as if one wrong step could shatter it completely. Reports from intelligence officers painted an even darker picture. Across the outer sectors, dormant Terran colonies had begun sending signals, coded messages, encrypted data bursts, patterns that Imperial systems could barely recognize. It was clear. Humanity had been silent, but it had never stopped growing, never stopped preparing. The Empire had assumed they were extinct, but in truth the Terrans had been waiting, evolving in the shadows, planning their return. Back in the capital, the Emperor paced slowly. His advisors hovered nearby, offering reports, analyses, and suggestions. He listened, but his thoughts were elsewhere. For the first time in his reign, he truly understood what fear meant. Not the fear of losing a battle or a war, but the fear of being irrelevant, powerless, and exposed before a superior force. One of the generals finally spoke. "Your Majesty, we must strike. If we delay any longer, the Terrans will gain even more advantage. They will be unstoppable." The Emperor shook his head. "Strike? At what cost? Our fleets have already been compromised. One wrong move and we risk annihilation. No, our priority now is survival, observation, and learning. We must understand what we face before we act." Meanwhile, the Terran vessel seemed to be almost alive. Its hull pulsed faintly with energy, and the smaller ships around it moved with coordination that suggested intelligence beyond any machine. Imperial scientists watched in awe as they analyzed the energy patterns. Every pulse, every fluctuation was calculated, purposeful. It was as if the ship itself was conscious, and its consciousness was calculating, learning, and waiting. In one of the Imperial observation posts, a technician whispered to a colleague, "Do you think they know what we're thinking?" The colleague didn't answer. They both understood the truth. They probably did. Every move had already been observed, recorded, analyzed. Humanity had returned not just with ships and weapons, but with knowledge, strategy, and patience honed over centuries. Across the galaxy, rumors spread faster than Imperial sensors could control. Citizens spoke in hushed tones of the dark ship and the Terran fleet. Traders delayed shipments. Miners abandoned deep space stations, and entire colonies went into lockdown. Fear had replaced confidence. The Empire, once seen as unstoppable, now felt exposed, vulnerable, and watched. Even among the soldiers and fleet officers, morale began to falter. The stories of one ship neutralizing fleets without firing a shot were repeated endlessly. Every officer knew it was only a demonstration. If the humans chose to attack in force, the Empire would not survive. Then, as if to remind the Empire of its fragility, the Terran ship made a small but deliberate movement. It rotated slowly, adjusting its position, and the smaller vessels around it mirrored the movement in perfect synchronization. Imperial sensors recorded the change, and analysts noticed something terrifying. The energy signature of the movement alone was enough to overload the systems of half the fleet. In the council chamber, advisors gasped at the reports. "They are demonstrating power without aggression," one whispered. "They don't need to fight. They are already in control." The Emperor nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "They are showing us what it means to be beyond us, and we are learning the hard way how fragile our power truly is." Across the Imperial fleets, ships continued to monitor the Terran vessel, but no one dared engage. Every commander knew that any aggressive action could provoke a response far beyond what they could handle. The humans had not yet attacked, but the message was clear. The Empire's dominance was no longer guaranteed. As the hours passed, communication networks across the Empire grew tense. Orders were issued, modified, and rescinded. Every movement of fleets, every adjustment of defenses, every broadcast to colonies was measured and cautious. The Empire had become a nervous giant, aware of its own vulnerabilities for the first time. Meanwhile, the Terran vessel remained calm, patient, and unwavering. It drifted through space with confidence, accompanied by smaller craft that scanned, observed, and recorded. Humanity was demonstrating that it no longer needed to fight blindly. The humans had returned as masters, not only of technology and strategy, but of patience and precision. Finally, a new transmission arrived, not loud, not threatening, but deliberate. It appeared directly on the Emperor's secure feed in Terran script. "The Empire has been observed. You are now aware. Prepare or step aside. Humanity has returned." The words were simple, but the weight behind them was immense. Every council member, every fleet officer, and every scientist felt it deeply. Humanity had returned not as a visitor, not as a relic, not as a weakened remnant. They had returned as a force to be reckoned with. The Emperor looked at his advisors. "Do you understand what this means?" he asked quietly. "Yes, Your Majesty," one replied. "We are no longer the rulers of the galaxy. We are observers. We are on notice. The balance of power has shifted." The Emperor nodded slowly, his face grave. "Then we must act with caution. Every decision, every step, every communication, it must be calculated. We cannot afford recklessness." Outside the capital, the Terran ship remained in orbit. Its presence alone had changed the galaxy. The Empire had been humbled. Its fleets had been shown to be fragile. Its citizens had been reminded of their vulnerability. And the message was clear. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. For the first time, the Empire truly trembled. Every fleet, every planet, every council chamber and control room across the galaxy knew the same truth. Humanity was back. Not as conquerors, not as survivors, not as shadows of the past, but as a force to be reckoned with. And the Empire, once the unchallenged power of the galaxy, had no choice but to watch, wait, and prepare for what was coming next, because the humans were here, and they had come home.